From a ghosty-looking woman who appears on the sidewalk of a scary, haunted old house to a continuous frightening night sound, these stories will leave you feeling terrified, hopeless, and uneasy. Hence, whether or not you believe in ghosts, it might be difficult to remain calm when you hear anything spooky or even hear a voice while you're by yourself. It's advisable to read the stories below aloud to someone. Ideally, it would be a friend rather than a random person you've chosen to sneak up on the street. When you're by yourself in the dark, what fear do you have? Join us in this adventure of scary stories for a sleepless and haunting night. Story 1. The Unusual and Terrifying Woman. It began around 2 weeks ago. I used to lie in bed and stare up at the ceiling as my mind would not stop racing with ideas. I did everything I could think of to get to sleep, including counting sheep and drinking warm milk. It didn't seem like anything worked. I felt like a zombie, and my insomnia was growing worse. I decided to go for a walk around the neighborhood one evening to decompress. It was then that I spotted her. A long-haired, dark-haired woman was crossing the street on the sidewalk. Her black, penetrating eyes appeared to blaze in the darkness as she fixed me with her gaze. I returned inside, but I couldn't get rid of the impression that she was observing me. She was back there the following evening, standing in the same location. I tried not to look at her, but I couldn't help myself. All of a sudden, she made her way slowly and methodically towards me. In a hurry, I dashed back inside and shut the door. That was the beginning of the nightmares. In my dreams, I would imagine the woman watching me sleep at the foot of my bed. I was sure she was still there, only hidden from view when I would wake up in a cold sweat. I found her sitting at the side of my bed one night when I woke up. Her eyes were blazing into mine as she fixed herself on me. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. My terror had paralyzed me. I went to consult a sleep specialist the following day. They connected me to a variety of devices and performed every test imaginable. However, I was in perfect physical health. It's all in my head, they claimed. I decided to confront my fears that evening. Determined to approach the woman, I returned to the sidewalk where I had first seen her, but she was gone when I arrived. At that point, I heard it. Something faint, like a whisper, came from behind me. When I turned around, no one was there. The murmuring intensified, becoming an overwhelming noise. The floor underneath me started to tremble. I tripped and fell, scraping the concrete with my hands. That's when I saw her over me once more. The lady whose eyes were black. "You can't get away from me," she said as she drew in close. "I will be observing you constantly." I screamed as I woke up. The sun was beaming through my window. It was dawn. It seemed as though I hadn't slept in weeks. However, when I surveyed my room, I became aware of a change. The woman had vanished. After that night, I didn't see her again, but I still can't sleep since I'm constantly worried about her return. Additionally, occasionally I do hear a faint whisper while I'm resting in bed. I'm the only one who can hear this sound. It appears that she is still observing me. Are you haunted yet? Well, don't be. Just click on the subscribe button for top scaries to get more of these interesting horror and unique stories. Don't forget to like, share, and comment on this video. Let us know the next story you would like to see. Story 2. The Creepy Old House. I have been sleepless for a long time. It was simply a little irritation at first. It would take me an hour or two of tossing and turning before I would eventually fall asleep. But things grew worse over time. I used to spend hours lying in bed, gazing up at the ceiling as my mind raced with concerns and ideas. I would jump at the slightest sound, and I would never be able to fall back asleep. I made every attempt to repair it. White noise devices, white noise generators, and sleeping medicines. Nothing was successful. Desperate to get some sleep, I decided to go for a walk one evening. The streets were empty, and it was the middle of the night. My mind was still racing as I mindlessly strolled around. I was lost in my thoughts to the point where I was standing directly in front of the old house. The old mansion was the type of property usually found in horror films. The windows were boarded up and the paint was worn and chipped. I should have turned and left, but something drew me in its direction. I expected the front door to be locked when I pushed open the gate and approached it. However, it opened with ease and let forth a cracking sound. The only sound in the musty, silent interior was my breathing. I have no idea why I entered. Perhaps all I needed was something to keep my mind off of my thoughts. But my sensation of discomfort grew as I made my way through the dim, dusty rooms. It seemed as though something was watching me and didn't want me to be there. When I turned to walk away, the door had vanished. There was merely a blank wall instead. It was like trying to move a mountain when I tried to shove it open. Panic began to spread in my heart like fire. I heard the laughs at that point, soft at the beginning, then becomes more frantic and louder. It resounded through the darkness, emanating from every direction around me. I took off running, but I had no idea where I was headed. The chuckles trailed me, drawing nearer. and nearer. At last, I blasted through a door and entered a little space. Shelves lined the walls, and there was a jar on each one, and a set of eyes in every jar. They gazed at me, blinking, and I could see my reflection in their depths. There was something worse now that the laughter had ceased. There was a whisper in my ear. It appeared to have come from a grave, because it was lifeless and frigid. And then it was done, as abruptly as it had begun. I felt free now that the door had reopened. Troubling myself outside, I was short of breath. The world appeared new and fresh as the sky began to lighten. I never mentioned what had occurred to anyone that evening. However, I also never forgot it. I can also feel the eyes in the jars watching me and waiting for me to come back every time I close my eyes. Is your skin still itching from the previous story? Story 3, Fear's Hole. I have never had a fear of the dark. When I was younger, I used to pretend to be an explorer running through the jungle as I ran around the house with my torch. However, after I moved into my new flat, something changed. I'm not sure if it was the little bedroom's lack of natural light or the old, creaky structure, but all of a sudden I started to feel nervous as the sun went down. Even though I knew the windows and doors were locked, I would check them again every night, just in case. I would leave the living room lamp on, and I used to lie in bed with my heart racing with the mind that every sound I heard was someone breaking in. However, things worsened. I heard a sound that night that chilled my blood. There was a faint scraping sound outside my bedroom, like someone dragging a knife down the wall. I lay there motionless, listening to the cacophony intensity, and then it ceased, just as abruptly as it had begun. I convinced myself that it was only a trick of my mind, but it happened again the following evening, and the subsequent evening. I was convinced that someone was attempting to breach the wall and enter my bedroom, since I heard the same faint scraping sound every night that only got louder and more persistent. I made an effort to ignore it, telling myself that perhaps the pipes were groaning or it was just an old structure settling, but the fear got stronger every night. I stopped going outside my apartment, stopped eating, and stopped sleeping. I was stuck in my head, sure that I was going to experience some horrible event. Then, one evening, I gave up trying to bear it. With my heart racing, I got out of bed and moved to the wall where the noise was coming from. I listened as the scratching became louder and more persistent as I put my ear to the cold, rough surface. Then, all of a sudden, it stopped. However, that was not all. Something started to press up against the wall while I stood there, paralyzed with horror. First slowly, then with increasing force, until the wall started to give way and crack. The wall then fell inward with an overwhelming boom, exposing a pitch-black, empty area. I cannot recall what transpired after that. All I know is that I was in an hospital bed with nurses and doctors surrounding me when I woke up. They informed me that I had been discovered unconscious in my flat, suffering from a fractured leg and a nasty cut on my forehead. I was unable to explain what had happened when they inquired. I was limited to shaking my head and repeatedly whispering, "It was fear. It was terror." What do you think about these intriguing stories? Let us know in the comment section below. Do you love scary stories? Check out our previous video, True Disturbing Police Horror Stories.